right, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. So we went through your proposals and we wanted to give you kind of our initial take on it. So looking in no particular order, Article 8B with the retirees. Currently, retirees enter in at $46,200 is where their starting salary is. We're a little hesitant to raise that at this point because we're not quite sure what the referendum's going to do. There's also some legislative proposals that would allow people to retire and then immediately come right back, whereas now they have to sit out a year. So we have to kind of look at that and see how much that's going to cost us. But what we would be, I see where you're trying to get maybe, and maybe I'm wrong, but we'd want to make sure that those retirees that come in who have at least 10 years of experience as a teacher, that they would be come in for that 10-year plus for purposes of the referendum. So we would be interested in maybe not raising the starting salary of them, but putting in language to ensure that they are eligible for the referendum. Because I think that was our intent from both sides. So we would, if you have anything to say before we can go back and do a written proposal and get it back to you next week, unless you wanted to take a longer break. We can get it to you. We come back on Monday and have something along those lines.
Well, our concern was, again, the teacher shortage. We were trying to find ways in which we could get our retirees to consider coming back. And of course, we do appreciate the referendum piece because we feel that would be a big help, that they would get credit for all of their years' experience, because that would be tough for them to come back with the kind of experience they have and not be a part of the maximum participation. But we also feel that, some movement in that salary schedule would be helpful as well. 46 is a little tough, to entice them to come back. So we felt that 50 would be wouldn't be, too far a move, but yet enough that we may be able to have some kind of an increase. So we would want some type of an increase on that, if at all possible.
Okay, we could look at it. We're also considering the possibility that one of the reasons we need retirees to come back is to come to these high needs, hard to staff schools. Would you be interested in seeing a proposal where it's 46.2 for retirees who come in to regular schools, what I'll call regular schools, but if they agree to go to a high needs school, their salary would be at possibly around the 50,000 mark. If they go to a high needs school, but there would have to be some kind of language that we built in that would guarantee that they're going to stay at that high needs school, not come in. Perhaps that the salary then would go back to the level of the 46.2 plus any increases that would have been gained in the time since they've been at that high needs school, so that they stay at the higher level as long as they stay at a high needs school. But if they move to, let's say, a Dreyfus or a Suncoast, then they would drop back to that 46.2 plus any increases that have been given to teachers since the time that they came back. Is that something you consider?
Sure, we could look at that.
Okay, because I think we're all looking for the same thing. We'd like these highly skilled teachers to come back, but it doesn't necessarily help us entirely if they're coming back into positions where we don't have problems getting teachers.
Right, and that's our concern as well, and you'll see in all of our proposals once you get our appendix as well, is that our effort is about trying to basically recruitment and retention, to try and keep teachers, where we have them and not have them move and leave, but also to attract people to come in, particularly those experienced, veteran teachers. That's why, this was, even though we only had a few items, that's why this took up one of those slots, because it was very important and critical for us.
Okay. So then moving on to 4, Section B, I kind of guess I need to understand what the reason is that you're looking to have that email sent out to teachers. What's the impetus behind that proposal?
Go ahead.
So, I think for years both sides have have struggled over trying to keep teachers in the classroom and in the school site versus the financial incentive that exists to leave the schools. Right now, in certain cases, positions, and not specifically, classroom positions in a school, but whether it's coaching opportunities and supplements of other kinds in the schools, if they're not advertised, some teachers aren't made aware of the opportunity to increase their income while staying in the school site. So we just want, the opportunity for teachers who work at a school site to be aware of other possibilities to earn income or add to their income at that school site. Sometimes when positions come available in schools, they're not really put out there and teachers aren't aware, and then they get filled. So it's just a matter of trying to create opportunities for teachers to learn of ways to make more in the school so they don't have to leave the school and come up to the district and things like that.
Okay, so it's not that I'm teaching at the school and the principal's advertising for a kindergarten position. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about the supplemental positions.
I think it's inclusive of teaching positions in the school or supplemental positions. Okay. Opportunities for those teachers, again, either to earn extra income, or if they feel they want to maybe make a change but not leave the school site. They're not, as much as people might believe, teachers aren't sitting on the district website looking at vacancies all day. So if it's provided to them, that might spark their interest and say, well, I have certification in these two areas. Maybe I could switch things up. And by doing that, it's a fresh start in the same school, so they don't think about leaving the school or leaving the career. It provides them opportunity and information.
Right, and it also provides information to the principal as well, because the principal may have someone who they would love to have in that position if they had known they were interested, before advertising it. So this is just a way of making it available to people in the school, right away. I mean, it's available online already, so we're not doing anything new in that regard, just making it available to those teachers who are on that campus.
Well, we have a couple of concerns. One is we're trying to move to a more we're trying to move more tech rather than coming back. We're worried about teachers complaining they get too many emails. We know that from our health insurance. We send out emails, they don't read them because they get too many emails as it is. The other piece of it is that we're a little concerned about the risk associated with that, because it would fall probably on the school secretary to make sure that I'm posting the vacancy for the principal. What if they forget and they don't post to send out an email on a particular position? It kind of creates a problem where, we could have grievances filed because I didn't get the coaching job. I know I would have gotten it, but for the fact the secretary didn't send out this email. So I'm a little worried about putting that much stress and strain on school secretaries when they're already taxed with how much we ask them to do. But the one thing you might be interested to note is that there's some scuttlebutt around with Oracle of creating an alert system, kind of like, Google has an alert for news. If you want to hear a particular, let's say if there's going to be an article put out by a professor that you like, you can do a Google alert. And so anytime something new by that person comes out on the web anywhere, they send you an email. So that may be something that we're moving towards in the future that might eliminate the need for that anyway. So if you're looking for a kindergarten position, if this would work how we kind of envision it might work like a Google alert, is I can put an alert out. So if there's a position that opens at this particular school in this particular grade level or whatever, I would get an alert rather than flooding their inboxes with every, we're putting out a thing, putting an ad for the assistant baseball coach. So now we're doing it for the JV coach, for the varsity coach. I mean, we could, at a high school with a lot of activities, that could be a lot of emails in those teachers' boxes every year. And I don't know whether that would achieve what you really want it to achieve, because at a certain point, when you reach that critical mass of emails, you stop looking at them. So we'll talk about it some more amongst our sides, but I just want to let you know where our concerns are with that.
Yeah. Again, we do feel that it could be a huge benefit to the school itself in terms of having someone who's already familiar with that school environment to move into another position that they had an interest in, wherein the principal did not know that they were interested in doing that. And probably in a lot of instances, the principal would have preferred to have someone who's already there to cover a certain position, but wasn't aware that they had just gotten certified in something, or they had an interest in a certain area. So we're kind of, again, it's along the lines of trying to retain teachers, and that's one way to kind of keep a teacher in a certain school.
Okay.
Particularly a high-need school.
All right, looking at Article 8, Section N, we're very interested in that study you talked about, because we were talking amongst ourselves. There are a lot of these mandatory end services. We even have it here at the district. The concern we have is that the dates of PD, or those professional duty days, may not align where the deadlines are. So, and they're coming out at different times. So, it's not like all the mandatory in-service is pushed out at the beginning of the school year and you have till like October 31st to do it. It's rolled out throughout the year depending on what mandates come out for us. So we would consider just agreeing to the study to address the number of trainings, how much time those trainings individually take, because it may not be that they need a full half day. And in talking to some of our principals, some of them build time in either to a faculty meeting or to those PD days. They're already doing that for a certain amount of a block of time to say, I'm going to give you this much time to finish these, 4 in-services that have just come out. So we would like to study that before we agreed to, just blanketly. We don't know what problem we're trying to solve first. My boss can be proud of me for using that language, because he's always saying, what problem are you trying to solve by what you're trying to change? So we'd like to look and see, what problem are we trying to solve? Is it the amount of time? Is it the number? Is it something the district could do so that they're rolled out all at the beginning of the school year, or maybe that they are rolled out at different times? So we'd like to study that. We reopen in April. We'd certainly be interested in it, but we want to see what problem we're trying to solve first.
I think you kind of hit on it in your response right there, which is that some principals elect voluntarily to allocate the time as a courtesy to their employees.
Correct.
Whereas many principals do not elect to do it. So that in what is the problem we're trying to solve, I think in trying to come up with some sort of procedure where it's not at the discretion of a principal to say, I'm not going to allow you to use PDD time for PDD, but over at this school they do. So some continuity in policy or contract, which is what we were hoping, something along the lines of what we proposed.
Right, and I agree with you. I think we need to look at it and see how much time does it actually take, and do they align with because PD is not every month. It's depending on whether you're elementary versus middle and high, of how many of those PDD days do you get. So we want to make sure that the deadlines would align, how much time is required, because maybe it's 2 hours instead of giving them the full half day. So that's what we want to look at. It's not that we understand there's a problem, but how much time is the problem that we're looking at, is what problem are we trying to solve with that, of how much time do we need for that, and is there something we can do at the district level to change how that mandatory in-service is rolled out and what those deadlines are, to figure out how we could maybe align them with PD so this would work. Because the last thing I'd want to do is say, okay, we're going to give you a half day for mandatory in-service, but your PD day falls at a point where you're supposed to have already had it done, or there isn't any, you've already done all of it by that point. So it's something we want to look at and figure out how much time are we asking of teachers to do this stuff? How many times a year is it? So that we can figure out how to align it so that we can achieve the purpose you're trying to achieve, without saying, okay, they can only do a half-day PD. Because that's what could end up happening, is there's no mandatory in-service required. There's a PDD day, and teachers go, nope, you can only do, this many hours of PD, because this many hours are supposed to be mandatory in-service. I've already got it done, so I'll see you later. We just want to be able to maximize the time we have and not waste teachers' time with things that we don't need to waste them with, but figure out a system so that it makes more sense.
Right, but And that does make sense. That's why in our proposal, we asked for, we called it an audit, but you said review, and that term is fine with us, as to how much is out there, because we know that if we got, say, for example, the first PDD day or the second PDD day for mandatory in-service, that time would be utilized for what's required. You know, I don't know all of the trainings, but we know that there are some that the state requires. There's some that we have to do every year.
Right.
You know, so we know that there's some there. I mean, if we got, you know, say 2 half PDD days instead of all of them, at least we know that we'll be covering some. And part of that is, again, it's about, you know, number one, teacher retention, that they're valued for the time they have to give, you know, for these type trainings. And so we just want to have that addressed in some way. And then after we do the review and the timing of the audits, because I think that's a great, you know, great idea. Then, you know, if we need to go back and revisit it, we could, and would know how to go about doing that.
Well, I think we'd be more comfortable doing the review first and figuring out what we need to do, because there is a lot of professional development that we think helps retain teachers by helping them in the classroom.
Right.
That I don't want to necessarily cut that out at this point without knowing that it's necessary. So I think you're right. I think it will be necessary, but I don't think we have the time from now until we can resolve this contract to get that review done. Because I think it's in various departments. It's going to be in our PD, but there's also risk management, there's IT. So we'd want to get from them all that information of what is required, how long does it take to complete it, and then address it in the contract to say, okay, this is how much time it's going to take. Let's give them that time, rather than giving you the time and find out we need more or we need less and then have to renegotiate and change that time. So I think we'd be comfortable, and we'll talk about it some more, but I think we'd be comfortable adding language in that we will review it in the next round of bargaining, that we agree, you know, and we can even agree outside whatever other reopeners we're going to use, that this would be something that we would look at. Okay. Then the last one is the Article 2O. You know, the 100% discount for aftercare is kind of a non-starter. It would bankrupt our school aftercare program. It would cut the ability of them to have the special programs that they do give the kids. And then it would also put a huge burden on those parents of our students who don't work for us, because that money's going to have to be made up somewhere else. And that money's going to have to be made up on other parents. And we also are starting with SEIU on Thursday. If we were to give you this, SEIU would be a Me Too as well, and they're our lowest paid employees. So I don't know how we would say that we'd give it to teachers, but not our lowest paid employees. So then we're looking at all 20-something thousand district employees having 100% free aftercare, and we can't do that. I mean, our aftercare programs would die. We wouldn't be able to do that. The parents who have to pay would be paying such an exorbitant amount, they'd go elsewhere. We also want to put the money that we have into salaries. And so any of these proposals that cost money comes out of what we're able to give in form of a salary increase for all employees. We will check with our choice and school choice and career program people today or sometime in the rest of the week to find out how the change that you're proposing about teachers and their kids, and whether when they transfer, where the kids go, to see how that affects some of our choice and career programs. So we're intrigued by what you've asked for. We think it's something that comes up with a lot of schools. A lot of the principals we have here have heard those, you know, the teachers being upset and whatnot. So it's something that we're seriously considering it, but we do need to check and see how that affects our choice programs and our magnet programs and that type of thing. If they may need a little additional language added in there to protect those, so those programs aren't harmed by allowing that to occur. So we do have a present for you, unless you have your other two proposals you'd like to pass around.
Well, we'll give them to you later today.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burke.
Hey, good morning, everybody. You know, I was thinking back, normally before we get into the salary proposals, I think last year I did like a 45-minute presentation on the state budget and what it means
Which
for
we
us.
can certainly do again if you'd like.
Well, no, I want to reserve that right to maybe pull out the PowerPoint at another date if we need it. But I thought in the interest of time, I'd try to cut to the chase a little bit. And I think, I know our bargaining teams, we've got a lot of the players that have been here for years, so you've heard a lot of that stuff before. But the bottom line I would like to just mention again is that our school board is really beholden to the state legislature and the governor for their budget each year. And that's the decisions made in Tallahassee really impact how much money we have to work with, and it really sets the parameters for our budget. And we've worked hard the last few years to do better by our employees, and basically our state leaders are doing to school districts. So when we get these pretty modest increases in per student funding, and this year, you know, the budget we got for FY19 is it was actually one of the worst budgets we've had in a few years. We, at the end of the day, ended up with a 1.2% increase in per student funding. And we've seen that streak for a few years now. The tougher thing about this particular year was we saw more of our money earmarked and categoricals for school safety and mental health. And we also had another increase to the FRS pension contribution that the district makes on behalf of employees. So we had really less dollars, you know, that were just discretionary dollars that we could to roll into our salary reserve. So we did develop a budget. We were able to build a $12.3 million salary reserve that was included in the board's budget. That is less than the prior years, and we're still working at that and looking at ways to free up more dollars as the school year has gone on. I will tell you, one of the things that has benefited us in the past did not materialize this year, and that was in our student enrollment area. The state had projected us to grow almost 2,800 kids. We only grew by 400 this year. So when our budget gets reconciled in Tallahassee based on the October FTE and the February FTE, we ended up sending back about $12.8 million to DOE after the October FTE survey. And we planned for that. You know, we scale back. You know, we go through an 11-day count process, and we have to adjust staffing and all that. But it's always better to be in a position where you've got significant growth. There are some economies of scale that usually we can eke some money out of that growth, and that was one less place to pull from this year. But nonetheless, we're working on it. I do want to just mention the base student allocation in this year's budget only went 47 cents. And that was you saw school district superintendents across the state kind of rally against that. And when the governor approved the budget back in March, there was a push to ask for a special session to come back and please reconsider because it was such a nominal amount. That didn't shake out. Those requests to reconvene the legislature, governor chose not to do that. He was satisfied with the budget as it stood. So anyway, all that just to say this is kind of a little bit tougher year than we've had the last few years, and we're trying to make the best of it. I also want to point out a big part of, if you recall last year, we were at the table and both parties acknowledged we had a serious issue with teacher salary compression. And we formed a task force. We had looked at maybe, you guys had presented a proposal that would have put some money into addressing that issue. And then at the end of the day, we agreed to have a joint task force. We did that, and some of you guys were on it. And that task force, the recommendation that came out of that to pursue the 1 mil referendum really paved the way for that whole proposal. And of course, we're all thrilled that the voters saw fit to approve it. Over 72% and change approved it, so that was great. And you're going to see that embedded in our proposal. I know it's next year's money, but we have the MOU. We've got, we're pretty transparent about how that would work if the voters approve for it, so it's fairly easy. We spelled it out exactly, the amounts and the years of experience and how we plan to do that with retention supplements. So we've got that, and that to me is really the most positive thing I have to talk about here today. So anyway, with that all said, we will pass these out. Maybe you could just send those this way and send those around the table there. Just wait a minute here till they make their way. So this spreadsheet, the format probably looks familiar if you were on the team last year. It's kind of the same breakdown, but let me take you through it a little bit. So what you'll see first is, we have this performance pay requirement that we've been working with in the last few years. I followed what we made a change last year that we looked at when we look at between the effective and highly effective teachers. For a number of years, we were doing fixed dollar amounts, and then last year we switched to a percentage for those two groups, and that also is helping to ease the compression issue. So we followed that again with percentages differentiating between highly effective and effective, and there's also a cost of living built in of 0.5%. So what you're going to see, I guess if you kind of work your way up from the bottom, new hires, and I'm sorry, that should say new 18-19, not 17-18. I just caught that, sorry. But new teachers hired this year would be eligible for the COLA of 0.5%. We have a small number of teachers that are on the developing or needs improvement based on their evaluation, so they would only be eligible for the COLA as well. And then for the effective and the highly effective, I've included the COLA plus an additional percentage increase for being effective or highly effective. So in aggregate, you'll see under this proposal, an effective teacher would get a 1.82% increase, and a highly effective would get a 2.26% increase. And then if you look at this in terms of an average for the group, the recurring piece of salary increase would be right at 2%. And that costs about $15.2 million. I want to point out the number of highly effective teachers continues to grow. When we were at the table last year, that we were at about 56%, and now we're up to 65%. So we do have a bigger number. You got over 8,000 teachers that are in that highly effective category that would get the larger increase. So that's basically the recurring salary increase offer. This would be retro back to July or the start of the school year. 2% or $15.2 million. Then we have, this was previously negotiated, but we agreed a couple of years ago to increase all the supplements by 5% a year, 10% in total over 2 years. So this start of next school year, we're, as previously agreed to, we'll be increasing those supplements another 5%. That costs about $758,000. And again, that was already something that we've bargained. And then the retention supplements, this is going to be huge. And if you look at the impact for your group, the salary component's almost $87 million. That's our estimate as of the latest numbers. We are starting already to attract more experienced teachers, and everyone that shows up with 10 years or more is eligible for that $10,000 supplement. So the cost of this is likely going to grow. But based on the latest numbers, if you providing the $1,000 for everyone that has a year of experience completed, $5,000 for teachers that have 5 years, really that 5 to up to 10 years, they get $5,000, and then at 10 years or more, they get $10,000. That reflects a 13.56% salary increase for the entire T bargaining unit for next year. And then with benefits, it'll be, close to $103 million. And again, that number might go up. So I just want to, I know we've already agreed to that and we've got our MOU, but I think it's important we talk about compensation just to recognize it. And then we have the state's Best and Brightest program that was continued this year. My estimate is dated. I will tell you, Ms. Knust here was just pulling more recent numbers, and we expect you're probably going to see over $16 million going to Palm Beach County teachers through the Best and Brightest program. But anyway, that's a one-time bonus. I know that was part of the concern with it, and that's why we went for the route for retention supplement, which was count for your retirement. The one-time bonuses do not count. They get paid out in the spring, and it's a lump sum, and it does not count towards FRS. But if you look at total package, there's a pretty positive story here. We've got, in total, over $132 million. And if you look at the impact of what we're talking about for FY19 and couple that with the Best and Brightest and the retention supplements, you're up to almost 17.75% or 17.74%, which will be, I think, a very positive thing. It's much more than we've ever been able to do, I think, since I've been at the table. And that's really our initial offer. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you guys may have.
I don't think it was either of our proposals last year. The district extended the $800 and $1,200 Best and Brightest bonus to members of the bargaining unit who were not qualified by state language. Is there any intent to do that this year, or?
That's not part of this initial proposal, but it's something we could talk about.
We certainly appreciate the offer, and certainly we have to go back and discuss and review our financial analysis and look forward to presenting a counteroffer.
That's great, and that's kind of what we anticipated. We weren't sure. The conversation earlier this morning when we said, well, it sounded like the parties were more interested in a one-year deal. Your logic makes perfect sense to me. I mean, the climate right now is of some concern in Tallahassee, and I don't really know. I don't have any great predictions that we're going to see some type of windfall coming our way into the years ahead. So limited to 1 year from our standpoint makes sense, right? Because we don't know what our budget is for FY20, so we'd be kind of going into that blind. So when we decided, when it looked like we were both talking about 1 year, that's why we went ahead and got this offer in front of you. Ms. Evans-Perret here is trying to get the bargaining wrapped up as soon as possible, so I thought in the interest of time I'd go ahead and give you our offer, reserve the right to dig into our budget more if we need to and talk about what the state's doing to us. Otherwise, we'll wait for your counter, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. And not only with this, the items that you presented us would require us to go back and do a little bit more study and research, because there weren't items that were real clear and simple. There are definitions we need to make sure that we understand in particular pieces. So we need to go back and sit down in caucus and go through each of your proposals so we can see how we fit. We chose not to get into a lot of dialogue right now about it, because there are a lot of legal pieces that we need to make sure we have an understanding of and how it may impact our members. So we want to give it serious consideration.
Okay.
All right. So so what we see now, unless you have something else, we'll go back and begin our caucusing and get ready for our next meeting on Monday. Is that right?
Monday. Do you have the other two proposals?
Right. I have them for you. I'll get them back to you today.
Okay, because if we had them before we break, then that would give us time to then do a little more digging into your next two proposals.
Okay, I can speak with you about that.
Okay, so we're not gonna address that now.
No, not right. No.
Okay, so I guess then we're done for the day.
Right, but I'll get that information to you today, though.
Okay, that would be helpful. Then I can pass it out to our group individually.
All right.
All right, sounds good. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Thank you.
You.